All right, we're on live on YouTube as well. All right, Uzi. Yeah, I was just telling you, I'm trying to get macro analyst monetized, and it had a few days of really good impressions. So maybe this is the time to go for that 90-day period. So I'm probably going to be tweeting some Tesla stuff through macro analyst and just retweet or something, and try to go that way. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I'm a fan of it. I also realize there's alley analyst, so you may need like a badge and then have it under the Yamant analyst, macro analyst, alley analyst umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's actually another one. There's so many analysts, but yeah, I only use the value analyst and macro analyst. I don't use the other two, only for like very specific purposes. If I need to do a one-on-one space, for example, we just did with Inflexity to check his audio, see how we can improve it. But yeah.
For me, it is fascinating to hear you talk about. I know I'm in the space often hearing about Tesla, but I think we were in a space at night. We were talking about maybe Amazon. Obviously, Apple was probably part of that. But to hear like the perspective in other companies fascinates me. I mean, macro, I need to learn more all the time. But other companies with you, I'm also curious to hear your point of view.
Which company are you interested in?
Well, tech for the most part. Palantir, I do like. Big fan of that. I did
What do
see
you like about
chat.
them?
Palantir. I mean, I think there's a government side and the commercial side, and then I guess there's interesting dynamic on X with some like meme cultures that I've noticed. Like Tesla has a big culture, Nvidia does not. So I just made. You probably saw me. I'm the Jensen Huang parody account, and I've been commenting on all your stuff.
I did see that. Yeah, I did see that. I didn't know it was you. That's cool. Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing good.
So you say you think we're gonna get 12.4.2 this weekend?
I hope so. I mean, I don't have any evidence, such as employees getting it, to suggest that that would happen, but it does seem like the time.
Yeah, yeah, I would. That would be good. Um, so no rumors or anything like that. We're just kind of hoping that it's gonna come this weekend. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you something yesterday, but yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit and then
No, I was just going to say, yeah, it kind of feels like the right time for it to happen, sticking with their usual schedule.
just kind of building back from yesterday's conversation around H100, H200, B100. So Elon said in the South End extension of Giga Texas, they're going to put Nvidia GPUs. Do you think it's going to be mostly H100s or B100s?
I think it's going to be H100s. And then I think the further expansion after that will be H200s and B100s.
Yeah, H200s are shipping now, right?
Yeah, they are.
So let's say, for example, next year Tesla starts installing B100s and then B200s. And then there's also GB200, right? GB200? What's the difference between those three? B100, B200, and GB200?
So, the GPU series, Nvidia names their like each GPU series after someone famous. So the Hopper series GPUs are the sort of current generation. That's what the H in H100 stands for, Hopper. Grace Hopper, go look her up. Amazing, pioneer of computer science. And so they also have like a CPU that they pair with the GPU. I think they call that Grace, right? So you got Hopper and you got Grace, and together you got a Grace Hopper supercomputer. So, and then they have also the next generation GPUs, which are the Blackwells. So the Blackwells are more powerful. Those I think haven't started shipping yet. But the H200, I believe, has more memory or memory bandwidth. I'm not sure about the details, but some additional sort of memory or something like that that helps with training LLMs. So it's really kind of geared around that. Um, but yeah, I think the H100s are what they're getting for Giga Texas, and then I think any further orders beyond that would probably be some of the newer hardware, such as probably the Blackwells or um, maybe the H200s.
When Tesla starts installing Blackwell chips, GPUs, would you expect a material increase in training?
Yeah, I mean, the Blackwell GPUs have more power uh, per performance and per price. So essentially, think about it as every year you're getting more bang for your buck. So you're spending, let's say you spend $1 billion on compute in 2024, and then you spend $1 billion on compute in 2025. That same $1 billion may get you, you know, several times the performance per watt and less energy usage, more performance, less space, right? So that's really the key here is that not only are we building out the data center, but the chips we're buying are just getting better and better. Before this, Tesla was training on the A100s. These new H100s are way better than those old A100s. And the B100s are going to be better than the H100s. And then the R100s, the Rubins, which is going to come after Blackwell, those are going to be even better than the Blackwells, right? So we're really riding a wave of progress here. If you come up with a general method of solving self driving that can leverage the increasing scales of computation such that it drives better the more compute and data you throw at it, then it'll get better almost automatically if you just add more compute. And because of Moore's law, the chips are getting better and better. So, okay, we'll just keep adding compute. Each new, generation of servers is more powerful than the last, and the thing just gets more and more intelligent, drives better and better, is able to handle more tasks as a robot. So that's kind of the strategy, and it seems like a good one.
All right, so that leads me into my question about Gavin Baker's segment that I posted at the top. Okay, so this is, just building up from yesterday's conversation about this 10x required increase in training compute to have the error rate of an AI model. And so this is the segment. This interview is from a couple of months ago. And I remember seeing it, and I'm kind of just thinking about in terms of how much training compute we need on FSD to develop FSD for unsupervised to get to 569s. And now that Elon posted yesterday that each 9 is going to require something less than 10x of training compute, it kind of brought up this segment again in my mind. And I'm wondering about your thoughts. But before that, just a quick note. I'm trying to get macro analyst monetized, which means I need to get to 5 million impressions. Therefore, I'm going to be posting some Tesla related stuff from macro analyst. So feel free to follow macro analyst. I'm going to do that for a few weeks. And then once we get to that, I'm going to switch it back to macro content. So back to the question, Omar. You just see this segment, and what do you think about it? Do you think it applies to Tesla FSD? Do you think we're missing something here? Because the way it stands right now, the way he put it in that video, we're gonna need orders of magnitude more, like several orders of magnitude more training compute to get Tesla FSD to unsupervised. What do you think?
Well, again, this isn't like a Bible type situation, but it's generally safe to assume we're going to need a lot more compute, right? So let's say, for example, we need 8 times the compute to get another 9 of reliability or half the error rate or whatever. Well, if the Blackwells are 4 times as performant as the Hoppers, then you need basically twice as many of them to deliver 8 times performance, right? So, yes, you need to build a lot more GPUs, but the GPUs are also getting a lot more powerful. So, we are going to actually see orders of magnitude more compute. That is actually what's happening here. And that is going to continue to drive the error rate down. It doesn't show any sign of slowing. As a matter of fact, they've shown that there are scaling laws, right? They've shown this in LLMs and they've shown this in FSD too, or at least they've alluded to it. They haven't gone into a ton of detail, but they can actually predict the performance of the model. They can say, okay, if we put this much more data and this much more compute into training it, then the error rate is going to go down by this much. And they can actually predict that fairly well. And then they go and they do that, and they can see how close they were and update those sort of projections. And they can actually get a sense of, okay, how much compute do we need and how much data do we need to actually get this down to a level of interventions that's less than a human.
Now, having said that, that's very much an estimate, though, right? Because we don't really know if we 10x training computes or if we switch H100s with B100s, how much the error rate will decline. We can assume we can rely on rules of thumb and stuff, but there is, declining returns to diminished returns to scale, right?
I mean, it's not really like a rule of thumb. It's more like you can actually see, you can plot it, you can plot the real data. And you can see that as you add more data and compute, the model just gets better and better. And, there are limits at some point, obviously. You can't just get to like 100%, but it, it really doesn't show any signs of slowing really in the grand scheme of things. It is, I mean, you look at just the pace of LLM releases, right? We've got another new LLM now that people are saying is now topping the leaderboards, Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And they're going to release their Claude 3.5 Opus, which is going to be the even larger version of that model. So, people have said, like, well, okay, aren't there really some diminishing returns here? But as long as you just keep adding more data and more compute, it doesn't seem like we're actually anywhere close to what some of these architectures can do for us.
Flexible. What do you think?
Uh, in my opinion, on the transformer models for vision specifically, the data quality is much more important than the amount of compute you put in. So, like I was giving an example earlier last day of a company called Vabo. So they were making driverless trucks and they are entirely reliant on synthetic data, which is in some cases a bad thing, but they are showing good results because they are taking engineers, they are asking them to come up with solutions for everyday highway driving for truck drivers. Now, obviously, they'll have edge cases that they can't account for in this scenario, but they can work on that later when they have pilot programs where they can see real life video. But I think this just shows that the data quality is much more important. You can work with less compute if your data is high quality, and Tesla to some extent has very high quality data.
Omar, what are some things that Tesla can do to increase quality of data further from here?
I mean, they've got the highest quality data you can get, real data from millions of cars. That's like the data set everybody else in the industry dreams of. So, one problem they don't have is data. And I mean, it seems like they've got this uh, looking very good. I'm running 12.4 right now. They're testing 12.5, 12.6 internally. From what I've heard, it just never requires intervention. Like, not at a level that we humans can perceive anymore. So, like, I think people have like PTSD from like years of following this or something, and they don't realize that this is actually working. The jump from 12.3 to 12.4 actually is, like Elon said, a 5x to 10x improvement. And there's no reason that we can't see further improvements of that magnitude. And, you've got driverless services running around like it's nothing now. It's normal to people. This is firmly out of the science fiction realm and now in the business realm.
Thanks, Omar. We have a question on 12.4.1. The question is, some people are claiming 12.4.1 has gotten better. This has happened in the past as well on previous versions. Is it confirmed that a version can actually improve itself without a software update? Now, we talked about this before. This question is from YouTube Live. There's no evidence
This
that
comes
the
up
version,
so much.
I know, like literally every time. There's no evidence that they actually do. But Omar, why don't you kind of give it another few sentence summary?
Well, the short answer is things can change between updates, right? Not everything is a full model update. Some things are configuration changes, some things are map changes. Sometimes they have something that's a new model that they need to validate before they put it into control. Like, for example, let's say you're at a traffic light and the model's supposed to decide if you have to stop or you have to go. Now, imagine you push a new model and it has an error where it sometimes thinks a red light is green and then you go and then you get in a car crash, right? That wouldn't be safe to just kind of push it out and let it out on the world. So what they do is they release it, they have the old model running in control, and then they have the new model and they compare the output. And they look at that and they look at all the cases where the new model and the old model differed. This allows them to ensure that the new model maintains the quality of the old model and that all of the it's catching everything it needs to catch and it's not missing anything. And then once they diff that and they look at it and they go, okay, this model really is better across the whole country, not just across our test fleet, but across even weird, edge cases like Alaska or whatever. And okay, now we can sort of flip it on. So then you have that model that may have been downloaded to your car, maybe even a part of the model, and then they can flip the switch on remotely. So there's different things that can change between updates. Literally almost every update, like you hear this like, huh, what? I thought it was bad, but now it's good. Well, yeah, things can change between updates. Another thing is, like, I've noticed there seems to be like a confidence threshold setting that they have where the car has a threshold of confidence it needs to meet to proceed. And I think that they keep that higher when the update is new. Because when the update's brand new, like we're talking brand spanking new, it's just gone out to like the early access testers, they may not know about an issue, right? So it's better to catch it, sort of have the car stop, send it up to the server, and then they can look at that and make sure there isn't really like an issue. And then as the update gets out and they review everything that's coming in and they go, okay, we're not seeing any major issues surface, then they can dial down that confidence, or sorry, dial down that confidence threshold and make it so that it's less hesitant and proceeds. This is like complete speculation on my part, but this is what it feels like. Every time you get a new update, it's more cautious, it's more hesitant, and then it gets dialed down over time. So that can also contribute to people saying that a new update is bad, right? Because they get the new update and they're used to the one which has, it's all ironed out. It has a lower confidence threshold. But then this new update comes out and it's configured to be more cautious. And they say, oh, well, it's worse. It's now hesitating where, the old update was going. But that's really just because it's new. And I like to say you kind of got to let it marinate a little bit, give it a few drives, give it a few weeks in some cases. And then, by the end, like 12.3.6 right now is nice and marinated and perfected. And 12.4 seems to be getting there too. So that's why I think they could be ready to do another release this weekend.
Thanks, Omar. JR says thank you for the answer. And he's asking if there's any source he can read upon possible introversion change, or is it all theories? Tesla never said anything to this end, right? I mean, we're kind of based on what
No,
we've
they
seen
have
over the
mentioned
years.
it.
They have? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch some of their tech talks. So go check out some of Andre Kropothy's videos. Go check out some of their CVPR talks, their AI days, their autonomy days. They have various technical presentations where they go into details about how they do things like this.
James.
Hey guys, I just wanted to give you an update. A few episodes back, I had mentioned I have 12.3.6 in my car, and there was this stop sign that is occluded by a tree, and you don't really see it until you get really close, and it would keep missing that stop sign, and I'd have to take over and stop. Just the other day, I just keep doing it as I drive past that stop sign pretty often, and this last time, it actually stopped. The car, I mean, it slammed on the brakes still because it didn't see it until the last minute because the tree's still blocking it for quite a while. But I was surprised that it actually behaved differently. Before I took over, it already slammed on the brake and it came to a complete stop. So I thought that was an interesting update on that blocked stop sign.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I wanted to ask if we can have a recap on the Q2 numbers like margins, sales in
Luce, you
Europe,
can't
China.
you can't skip the part where you say I want to ask them. Just ask the question. And
Yeah,
try to use
sorry.
10 words.
Yeah.
So that when people stick to 10 words, it actually makes their communication much, much better. So what's your question?
Can we have a recap on how Q2 is going regarding to margins and sales in China, Europe, and the USA? Thanks.
You know, the person to ask that, let me see if he's here. Climate Yupa. No, Michael is not here right now. We can probably have that discussion later. I'll keep an eye out for folks. But Omar, do you have a view? I don't think people in this space are generally focused on quarterly production delivery assumptions, but Uzi?
My question's about the data, if that's all right.
Yeah, go
Quality
ahead.
data. So, Omar, would quality data be disengagements at this point, just to clarify?
Sorry, do we still need disengagements?
Like, would that be considered quality data so that...
Well, data is a lot of things, right? So, data is everything that the model trains on. It's also everything that you use to test the model, everything that you use to see how these cars really perform in the real world. Like, there's a difference between, your car and like some crackhead's car that, maybe some crackhead has a Tesla somehow, and I don't know, some rats chewed through the wiring or whatever. And, making sure it's reliable even in situations like that. So, the most important thing is that they have 6 million people driving the cars manually, right? So that's really where the driving comes from. So how did they, so your car is sitting in a left turn lane and it has to turn left, and your car has cameras on it, and it needs to predict what angle it needs to turn the steering wheel. Actually, it needs to predict an array or a vector of steering wheel angles as it traverses the intersection and update that in real time. So how does it calculate that? It calculates that by looking at the trajectories that humans took in the same situation. And it learns how to map the relationship between what it sees visually in the image space in the camera video and how that translates to steering wheel movements. So it's learning from people. So that's the most important thing. People driving around manually. So a lot of people say, oh, I have to drive FSD all the time. You need to do both. Drive when you want to drive, use FSD when you want to use FSD. And be a good example for FSD. Teach it how to drive. When you see FSD get stuck or confused or hesitate, say, here, let me show you, and take over, do it, then you can turn FSD back on. And that's how it's going to learn how to do things that it's not doing correctly. And you can even leave a note and you can explain if you like when you disengage. Then the other thing that they need is intervention data, right? Because you've trained this model, but you don't know what's wrong with it, right? And, Waymo, for example, they don't know everything that's wrong with their model because they've only tried it certain places. Like when you really talk about roads, it really gets pretty open-ended. Like you're really just talking about moving around the world. Like the variety of roads we have in this country is pretty broad, from highways to like dirt roads and everything. So, taking the model out there, running it in shadow mode, and then comparing its output to human drivers to see what human drivers did differently or what the model did wrong. And then also looking at interventions from people who are on FSD. You can never be quite sure that the model did something wrong, except if it does do something wrong, especially something dangerous, the human will always take over. So that's a great source of truth on what is going wrong, right? So every time you have an intervention, you take over, that shows Tesla, hey, there's an issue with the model. It has this problem. It, tried to, hit the curb or something, right? And then they can go and they can take the data and train it and say, okay, this was incorrect. You don't want to hit this curb. And they can train a better model. And in theory, the goal is to make a system where this could all happen just completely automatically. There's no people even involved. So you're driving down the street and, you have to make a right turn and your car brushes against the curb or almost brushes against the curb and you take over. Or you don't take over and it, logs that there was an impact. They send that up, they send the footage up to the server. The system then goes and sends out a trigger to collect data of a human driving that intersection. It says, attention, all Teslas. The next person to make a right turn on this intersection, or even the next 100 people, please record yourself making that right turn and send it up to me. And then they send it up. And then the training process would begin and a new model would come out and it would just make that right turn, properly in theory. And they could then test it. They could add it to their eval set. And every time they have a new model, they could run that video through and see what comes out to make sure that it doesn't have a regression and do that again. So in theory, you could have this system where it is learning automatically with very little human interaction. And everything that, it just has an issue with, it just learns from watching someone do it. And the models keep getting bigger and bigger. The hardware on the car keeps getting bigger and bigger. And, it should just be a lot more intelligent. You can see, Elon talking about AI 5. They're doing something that's even 10 times more powerful than hardware 4. So as the models get bigger, the level of planning and thinking and understanding they can do is also going to increase.
Alice.
Did you call me Alice?
No, Dallas Tesla.
Oh,
Dallas
sorry.
Tesla Club. I think he had a question that applies. Looks like he's away. Alex, how are you?
Good, you?
Good. What's
Friday?
on your mind? Yeah.
Not much. Looking at the recent post from SpaceX engineers, like plugging in the new Starlink Mini. That thing is like really impressive. Like Starlink has always been impressive, but basically just plugging, like I don't know if you've seen it, but they're just plugging a power outlet into the Cybertruck bed, connecting one wire, and then just pairing the device, and boom, 180 megabits per second. It's, I don't know. I don't think people realize how how transformative this is going to be for so many people.
When do you think we're going to get an antenna in Teslas?
I don't know if
We
it's,
already have one.
yeah, they already have one. It's, of course, it's not connecting to Starlink satellite in orbit, but yeah, it could be an option, honestly, like that they could offer at the size that it is now. They could actually find a spot for it. But
It
yeah,
can connect to a Starlink in orbit if it has the direct-to-cell technology.
yeah, but again, this is low bandwidth. You're not going to download like a software update via that. I don't think you could.
I mean,
but
they've demonstrated a video call over it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think like, low bandwidth information when a robotaxi's out of the surface area, but has a line of sight to the sky, you could even do it on like a 2018 Tesla. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, it's nuts. Well, the basic direct to cell technology, that is also very mind blowing that they've managed to achieve that. But yeah,
Yeah.
the Starlink, I don't know. There might be use cases, for people who work in very remote areas. I don't know, like I'm thinking like Alberta, oil sands fields, and they need, a Cybertruck that has high bandwidth connection. They could probably integrate something at the size that it is and that the low power consumption it has, that they could have like broadband anywhere in the world using Starlink via Tesla. But I don't think it will come standard at all for like all cars. That's probably not going to happen.
Omar, can you elaborate on 2018 Teslas can do it too?
Yeah, as Alex mentioned, the direct-to-cell technology, which they unveiled with T-Mobile, essentially puts a cell tower on the satellite. So if you're let's say you're in the middle of nowhere, right, where there's no cell tower, you can at least connect to that cell tower in space and send a little bit of data over that, right? It's not going to be as good of a connection as a cell tower on Earth, but as a last resort, if there's no Earth cellular connection, then you would be able to connect to that. And Elon has confirmed on Twitter before that Tesla vehicles will be able to connect to that and even send an emergency message if necessary through the service.
James.
Do we know what current service powers the data in Teslas? Is it AT&T or like is that public knowledge?
Does anyone know?
I mean, I believe it's AT&T, but the car has like an eSIM in it, right? So Tesla's paying for the plan themselves. They aren't like charging you. I mean, they're charging users, but they're on the back end just paying the provider themselves and probably paying more than what the premium connectivity fee is. So I think they're contracting with AT&T, but they can essentially provision it to connect to any cell provider that they have an account with, right? So they can provision T-Mobile, they can provision any other GSM carrier, or I guess it wouldn't be GSM today; it'd be LTE or whatever. 5G. No, actually, I don't think they have 5G in their cars yet. So yeah, LTE.
Yeah, it's LTE in the cars right now. Cool. Interesting.
Alessandra, you may unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay. Go ahead. All right, Rich.
Hey, thanks. Relevant question. This probably Omar maybe could answer. A friend of mine just purchased Performance 3, was driving from Chicago to through Minneapolis, and he was trying FSD, and he was having quite a few issues where he was getting. It was late at night. I was kind of trying to troubleshoot with him remotely, and he was getting the warning sign that or the warning saying, camera is blocked or can't see.
He can ignore that. That's normal. It doesn't mean anything.
But it would FSD wouldn't engage. And so at the same time that he was trying to engage FSD, he was saying that he was not having cell service. So he was in kind of a remote area, driving up to through Minnesota or past Minnesota, and the FSD wouldn't engage. And so I was curious if it was
You don't need
potentially,
cell service to use FSD.
but
The
if the
cameras
roads were
do.
unmarked, like he was kind of like the it was kind of like a narrow highway, not a lot of good markings on the road late at night.
You don't
It
need
was,
cell service. You don't need road markings. You just need the cameras to be calibrated, and that's it. And if you're driving through a dark area, it's normal for it to pop up this annoying message that the cameras are occluded just because it's dark. Which, by the way, if there's any Tesla engineers listening, it doesn't need to beep at me every 5 seconds. I get it. Okay, the cameras are blocked. You don't have to go doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. I'm trying to listen to music. I'm trying to enjoy. You're just stressing me out here. So one doo-doo-doo is enough. Okay, but I digress. So other than that annoying message, you should be able to use it even if it's dark.
All right.
thank you.
Inflexity.
Oh, and if it's not working, use the service section in your Tesla app. You'll be able to message with Tesla, and they'll be able to take a look at the car remotely and help you without even coming into the service center.
Good to know. Thank you.
Inflexity.
Yeah, someone brought this up, but the Tesla is actually building its 5G network for future cars. We had a few job posts at the start of the year, and I think they are still working on it.
Dallas. Dallas. Luce.
I wanted to say that in Europe, satellite internet will be incredible compared to the data plans we have here. Starlink can literally put out of business many data providers. It's really incredible compared to what we have.
Thanks, Luce. Dallas, are you having a connection issue? Are you able to unmute yourself? Blink twice if you can't. Okay. Avik Sarkar.
Hey, yeah, had a quick question. So, in my opinion, from whenever I speak to some of my friends, everyone keeps saying that they don't want to get an EV because they don't know where to charge. If you stay in an apartment complex and the complexes are old, no one's going to set up charging networks around. And if you have to go to supercharger charge, I don't know, once in 4 or 5 days, or something, it's inconvenient. Is there something you guys have in mind as a proposal that we should make to help make kind of like fix this convenience issue? Thanks.
Tell them, just buy it. Do you say, well, I want a new car, but I don't know if there's room for a gas station in my apartment? It doesn't matter. It's a huge convenience if you can get it to be able to charge at home. But I lived in San Francisco for years in an apartment that didn't even have parking, let alone a spot to charge the car. So I went to the public garage. They had a charger there. I'd plug in while I sleep and I'd walk home. Whole Foods has a charger. So you go to Whole Foods, you shop, you plug your car in. They've got a fast charger there. You find a mall with maybe a Volta charger. There are, a growing number of chargers around. So depending on where you live, there may or may not be chargers that you can use, even if you live in an apartment. If you live in California, it's a very good situation. And a lot of people just use superchargers and, they charge once a week and that works for them. But I find that it's often just good to get the EV first. And then you'll eventually push yourself to figure out how to get the charging set up because it's so convenient. So even if that involves moving to a new apartment or a new home or something, eventually you do. And you start looking at things like whether there's an outlet where I park and that type of thing. And then once you get it set up, I mean, you're like, you have a better situation than anybody where you can just charge while you sleep and you never have to go to the gas station for your day-to-day driving. Just drive as much as you want anytime, pay very little compared to gas, and never have to stop to get fuel. So just tell them to get the EV first and they'll figure it out. It really isn't as complicated as people think. Any outlet you can charge your phone with can also charge your EV very slowly.
I gotta say,
Easy.
my mom charges at home and uses the mobile charger, so 110 volt. She doesn't probably drive as much as other people, but for her, it's like perfectly adequate. A regular outlet, she's always like 80% and above, because overnight it trickle charge, and she has enough always. So I agree
Yeah,
with Omar.
you can totally get by on the 110. Ross Gerber's been driving a Tesla for years, and all he has to charge is the 110, right? If you drive less than, 30 miles a day or so, and you just leave it plugged in when it's not charging, that's going to cover, pretty much all your needs. I love when I go to like an Airbnb for the weekend or something, and I find some 110-volt outlet outside, and I plug it in, and the thing's super slow. It says like, okay, it's going to take 24 hours to charge your car, but you're there all weekend. You just keep it plugged in and then you just leave and you can take a whole road trip without ever having to stop and get fuel. It's pretty amazing once you get used to it. Like, I mean, there's a reason why EV sales are just growing like crazy. It's because it's just way more convenient and not even mentioning not having to drive and stuff like that. It's just like I can't believe that people are still going to gas stations, honestly. It's been 6 years since I've owned a gas car now, and I don't miss going to the gas stations at all.
Easy.
From a multifamily perspective, from my work, we look at like for the parking, we look at what types of cars people have. So if they're EVs, we're looking at the IRA tax incentives. And on top of that, if people don't have EVs, then we're not going to provide charging because they don't have EVs. So it's a cycle.
So, my dad's building a 50 unit multifamily apartment building right now in Indio, California, and we're putting universal wall connectors in every parking spot, and we're going to actually charge for it. It's going to be a revenue source. So some states like California actually have a law that if you write a letter to your landlord and you say, I want to install EV charging and I'm going to pay for everything I need to do it, they have to let you do it. So check your state laws. More states like California are actually adding protections for people in multifamily housing so that they can get charging to their car even if they live in a parking garage that's shared.
Just wanted to add, I can attest to the living off of 110. I have a detached garage where our breaker box is on the main portion of this, and we were quoted on this house to have a wall connector installed, and the quote was like 4 grand or something crazy. So aside from a few months of the summer where a lot of AC is used driving around, the living off of a 110 for daily commuting is more than I need. So
Yeah, I would also recommend to people in that situation to just have a electrician install a NEMA 1450 outlet that's 220 volt. That'll charge you up in like less than 6 to 8 hours, or probably less than 8 hours for most cars. So you sleep, dryer outlet. If you have a dryer outlet where you have the dryer plugged in, you can get an adapter for that with the mobile connector. I think it actually comes with it. And you just plug it in there and it'll charge you up faster than you can sleep at night.
I'll look into that.
Thank you. Just a quick note. This space is financed by this space is supported by my patrons. The link to
Omar, one
Patreon
other
is
thing
at
you
step
mentioned
of
earlier
the.
about
I don't think he can hear me. There's having some connection issues, I think. If you want to sign up for Patreon, the link is at the top of our screens. Ben, go ahead.
So let's say I'm gone or out of town for a week and I want to put my Tesla on the robotaxi network and it begins to run low on charge. Will it just wait until I get back, or is there like a solution for that, or is that just going to be a limitation?
Well, you'll probably have a wireless charging pad installed at home, and it'll just go park over that and then charge itself. Or, go to a supercharger. Obviously, there'll have to be some solution for them to charge themselves. Like in the future, nobody's going to think about charging their car. If you live in an apartment, you won't even need to get charging set up. It'll just go charge itself if it needs to. And if charging is set up there, then that's just a bonus. It doesn't need to go drive somewhere else. But it's going to be completely transparent to users in the future. Do you, as a robotaxi user, wonder where the car is charging? No, you don't care. The car just shows up and it takes you where you want to go. So that's really the future.
Yeah, and if you're like going out of town and your car drops you off at the airport and you put it into like robotaxi mode, it'll plan that it needs to pick you up like next Monday at 1 p.m. and it'll know that it can't be like at 2% state of charge when it picks you up. So all these things are going to be pretty easy to set up. Like for Tesla, this is not like brain surgery.
You come
Man,
back
so
from
many questions.
vacation, there's a
So
homeless
many
guy living
questions
in your
around
trunk.
charging still. It's amazing how many questions there are about charging. Even from people who've owned Teslas before.
And it's kind of
Yeah.
weird given that, we've had electricity. It's not, you use electricity everywhere. Like Omar was mentioning, like you go with your iPad, your iPhone everywhere, and you find ways to charge it. Nobody has anxiety about charging anything else except cars, apparently. And it's weird because there's so many ways to charge them. But I don't know, it's probably part of the FUD that, legacy media has been pushing for years, that it's a big problem, but people who have bought it don't live those problems.
I think it's really interesting. If you look at a survey of new EV buyers, they're all concerned about charging. And when you look at Tesla buyers, it's not one of their concerns. It's normal, but you have to learn, right? You have to get used to this stuff. You have to know some of these details. We have a century of car knowledge that's been built up and passed through families over generations. People know what to do. Oh, I know how to, change the fan belt or look at what's going on with the transmission. For EVs, it's all new, right? So there is that learning that needs to happen, that infrastructure build out that is happening, and the knowledge is spreading. But yeah, even some people who are EV drivers don't necessarily know everything that they might need to know.
Was in a space last night where there were like honest questions from people like what's the maintenance on a Tesla? It's like, do you have to change oil or something? Like they don't even know, like that. It's like zero maintenance. There's
Yeah,
so few things
Consumer
that can
Reports rated.
break. Yeah, there's so few things that can break that like even the brake pads had to explain like regen braking and one pedal driving, that probably your brake pads, you'll never change them for the life of the car.
All right. Thomas.
Can you guys hear me?
Which Thomas?
How many Thomases are there?
Okay. How can FSD learn about time restricted turns when the clock is not part of the video feed?
Well, it knows what time it is because your car has a clock. So, I'll just leave you to go find one of these signs and go download the ChatGPT app. And then I want you to take a picture of the sign and I want you to ask ChatGPT, hey, it's this time right now. am I allowed to make this turn? And see what it says. My guess is it can probably answer the question correctly most of the time. And our self-driving cars will be able to do the same.
Yeah, I just don't think that the clock is part of the video feed that's going into the training.
The clock? What clock?
The time, local time.
Well, your car knows the time. It
Yeah,
doesn't need to
of course
pass
it
it
knows the
into the
time.
training
But
feed.
if it's video bits in, where is the clock and the video bits? There's no video bit of the of the clock.
Well, yeah, your car's not just taking in, the video, right? So it's taking in a lot of different parameters. It's taking in map data. It's taking in your GPS coordinates. It's
The
taking in
state of the car.
inertial measurement units, the time. All of this stuff is available to the computer. It's very easy for the computer to check the time. It can pull it from the server. It's super accurate. Finding the time is not going to be a challenge.
No, that was not the point. The point is that the time is not represented in the cameras, and if the training is based on camera input, that was the question.
But how do you know the time is not taken into account in how
I think
FSD is
the
trained?
question. I think the question is answered. Derek, go ahead.
Hey guys, two questions. First one might be a little bit ignorant. You mentioned wireless charging. Are the cars actually capable of that, or is that a retrofit? And then the second question is supercharging prices. Who determines the prices of the supercharging rates, and is that something that is anyone else concerned with? Because I've seen some pretty outrageous pricing. Or is that just a small percentage of our driving that we shouldn't be too worried about it?
So the cars don't seem to have the wireless charging hardware installed today. The Cybertruck looks like it has a port for a wireless charging pad to be installed, but they've confirmed that they're going to do a wireless charger and have some wireless charging hardware for the car, but it's not something that we've seen come out yet. And in terms of supercharging, Tesla sets the supercharging pricing, and they set it obviously to cover the costs of building out the network, which are large, but also to encourage people not to come there. They want people to charge at home when they can or charge somewhere else so that the fast chargers are free for people who need them for road trips and other time sensitive issues.
Charlie.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
Oh, fantastic.
What's your question?
I didn't have a question. You asked me to log in yesterday for people to ask me some questions. I was the one who just put up a post on X earlier this morning that that the August 8th event will include the unveiling of the Model 2 and the unveiling of the robotaxi. I hear there's a third vehicle that may also be unveiled, but I have no idea what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were having a discussion with Machine at the time yesterday, and I thought that your thread was informative, but he's not here right now.
Good.
So let me just kind of read while we have Omar here. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit. I just ask you to stay on mute when you're not talking. So at the top is Charlie's thread. FSD will definitely work on hardware 3. The upgrade from hardware 3 to hardware 4 was made because the supply chain for hardware 3 components was weakening. Plus, hardware 4 uses less energy. As hardware iterations increase, Tesla will keep compiling FSD for hardware 3, 4, 5, etc. Functionally, these will perform the same. And then the thread continues. Somebody asked, when has more compute never been required? Which that is what Machine asked. Plenty of time during computing history when less compute was fine. Moving code from an interpreted BASIC to compiled code C++ reduces compute requirements dramatically. Same is true from moving C++ to AI. Present AI models will look childish compared with AI models 3 years from now. So it's very possible that code running on hardware 3 will become more and more efficient over time, and hardware 3 will never become obsolete. Hardware 4 was designed to reduce power requirements, not for increased compute needs. If hardware 4 is emulating hardware 3, then it's not saving as much power as it could if FSD was running in native mode. The reason to train FSD model on hardware 4 is not to increase performance, it is to save power. Omar, do you agree with all of that?
I'm not sure why the power consumption would be greater when you're emulating. I mean, maybe you're thinking about like virtualization or something, but I would imagine that the hardware 4 board was just designed with hardware 3 compatibility in mind and probably has functionality baked into the hardware to downsample the cameras and run in hardware 3 mode. So, I mean, if anything, I would expect the larger hardware 4 models would actually have greater power consumption. But other than that, I agree with most of what he wrote.
Well, I think that if so, you're absolutely right. The hardware 4 could be backward compatible with hardware 3, but if it was, then you wouldn't have to recompile for hardware 4. So the way Elon Musk has described it, it's kind of running in a simulation mode. And if it's running in a simulation mode, then it definitely has overhead to it. So the real the energy savings, let's see, the hardware 4 is a 7 nanometer silicon process. Hardware 3 is 14 nanometers. So the power savings that you get from hardware 4 is going to kind of be reduced a little bit because you're running in a simulation mode. At least that's what Tesla is saying.
Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting a little into the weeds here. I don't think it really matters about the power consumption per se, but I would expect that running a larger hardware 4 model would probably use more power than running a smaller hardware 3 model. Even if there is some overhead to emulation, I would imagine that the chip designers made sure to minimize the overhead because they knew that they would be running hardware 3 models in emulation for some time. So I'd be surprised if it's not very much built into the hardware, the ability to run the hardware 3 models with minimal overhead in emulating hardware 3.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah, larger models, but on a more efficient chip. Emulation, yes, there's overhead, but at the end of the day, what are we talking about here? Like a few watts, maybe, like tens of watts. I don't see the point of like to get into the weeds for the sake of getting to the weeds because we're fans and everything, but for Tesla and Tesla owners and FSD's progress, I don't think it matters those few watts we're debating right now.
Well, yesterday people were saying that, what if FSD, what if hardware 3 is not going to be powerful enough to run the FSD code? And the point of my post was that it's very possible that hardware 3 will be fine to run FSD for a long time. I
think so too.
Yeah, I think that so that the red herrings that people were raising that, FSD hardware 3 is not strong enough, it will eventually become obsolete. I think it's all, I don't see that, especially from what Elon Musk has said about the power of the hardware 3 and where they are right now as using compute when they're doing inference.
I mean, These people aren't really going off of anything logical. Like the people who make these kinds of arguments where, any sort of good news or anything exciting has to be twisted into something bad. They're usually, upset at life for some reason. Maybe they got fired, maybe they bought a ton of Tesla at the top and lost money, and now they have to justify why it's Elon's fault and he's a liar and he failed. And oh, hey, guess what? In 18 months, we're going to have a new hardware 5, and it's going to be even more powerful. That's coming in 2026. Oh my god, that means hardware 3 is out of date, it's obsolete, it'll never be able to be a robotaxi. No, that isn't what they said at all. Right now, every version of FSD they've trained has only been a hardware 3 version. They haven't even started using hardware 4's power yet. So, I don't really waste too much time worrying about what these people say. Whatever happens, they'll find a way to twist it negative. If Elon shits a brick of gold, they'll say, oh my God, he's having health issues. This is a serious concern. If, whatever happens, it'll be disappointing. So at the end of the day, they will either succeed in making hardware 3 driverless or they won't. And honestly, I think it matters a lot less than people think. What matters first is, can they solve autonomy at all? After that, we can worry about which cars can run it in terms of hardware 3 or hardware 4. If, let's say, you can't do hardware 3, give people a retrofit. If you can't give people a retrofit, give them a coupon. Here, $10,000 off your next car, free FSD, whatever.
No, they can definitely make a retrofit. I mean, it might take making a new hardware 3.5 using the hardware 4 chips, but there's nothing that would prevent Tesla from actually designing a new board that would be form factor compatible with all the vehicles that are out there. But to get to the heart of your question, this is what I raised in my ex post today, which is there is absolutely zero question that Tesla has already solved the FSD problem. I mean, the amount of money that they would have to invest to design and tool the robotaxi, to design and tool the Model 2 is phenomenal. I said in my post that it's at least $2 billion. I think it's, it could be easily could be double that. I don't know how much their sharing there is between the robotaxi and the and the Model 2 vehicle, but I can tell you that some people have been saying, oh, they're going to all the vehicles in the future are going to be made out of stainless steel. I don't believe that's the case. Certainly, the vehicles don't look anything like the new Cybertruck. So these are just going to be vehicles that are the Model 2 is designed as a passenger vehicle, and the robotaxi is probably a 2-seat vehicle
Yeah.
designed
Okay.
for.
Charlie, thank you. Your connection is really bad, and we're jumping around topics here, and we have other people on the board right now. Magic, go ahead.
Hey, actually, I agree with a lot of what's being said. I think, Tesla's $2,000 a share. It's going to hit $2,000 a share. They're going to have robots, robotaxis, flying cars, and I really recommend everybody should just go all in. I mean, it's free money. I don't understand why you wouldn't. And if you don't, you just don't believe in Elon. Put every dollar you have into Tesla. Borrow money from your parents, max out credit cards, take out HELOCs. It's easy. I don't understand. Do you want to be part of the future or no? This is a very simple question. Show your support and post screenshots. I just don't understand. It's easy. It's so easy. There's no easier way to make money than to put every single penny into Tesla. Okay?
This sounds so much like my rant a couple of months ago about Rivian. Somebody's gonna clip that and make that into an alarm of their car. Magic. So how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fantastic. I'm just saying. I feel like it's just a great opportunity for, just
Yeah.
make everything.
Well, we had an earlier question. Maybe you can answer that for Luce. Luce asked earlier, how do you think the production deliveries and kind of margin prospect is going for Q2?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, we follow Troy Tesla, and usually it's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, Europe is not doing well, from what we're seeing on delivery side. So I think margins and deliveries are going to disappoint. But again, this is not a car company, right? So it confuses me why everybody's excited about the Model 2. It's not a car company. The cars, it's just not a
Yeah,
car.
we're not talking about Model 2 right now, but the question for you. So you're short Tesla. Are you short Nvidia, SMCI, or other chip companies?
I'm short Apple right now as well.
Wow.
It's just very expensive. I'm short. What else? Some regional banks. I'm also short Discover Financial Services and Capital One. I am also short a little bit of Morgan Stanley, and I think that's about it. I don't think those are the majority of my dollars.
Are you kind of 120-20 kind of portfolio, or are you market neutral?
It depends on the personal portfolio. It depends on what it is. I mean, the majority of my money,
Gotcha.
the majority of my money is in T-bills. This is just the sleeve of my majority of my money is in T-bill, oil, and gold, and the rest of it is pretty much short. I'm long, pretty much oil companies and commodities and gold at the moment.
Gotcha. Omar, would you like to say anything about production deliveries and margins for Q2? How do you think it's shaping up?
Yeah, I'm looking at like 420,000 deliveries. So I think it'll be better sequentially, down year over year. And, generally the auto business remains fairly challenged. I'm obviously a huge fan of the products, love their cars. Hope they sell lots of them. Maybe some things need to be re-examined to figure out how they could sell more. But, generally my view on this as an investor is kind of like, look, they've got a pretty dominant position globally. They're continuing to be a dominant player in the US market, in China. And it kind of makes me think about, like if you take a look at, Tesla's stock chart and you look really before 2020, 2019, it looks kind of flat, right? That long period. And there were some very dramatic gyrations in there. A lot of points where people doubted the company, worried whether it had a future, points where you saw a 50% decline. But zooming out, looking back today, it all just looks flat. So really, whether they deliver 420,000 or 460,000 or 500,000 cars, obviously, if they sell more cars, they make more money, which is great. But really, on the AI side of the business, if they do it, it all looks irrelevant. And if they can't do it, then the company's probably worth 50% to two-thirds less, even if they have really great deliveries, right? So that's kind of really where my head is at. I'd love to see the auto business doing better, but I really see them in a product transition right now. That's kind of how I view what's happening with this company right now. They've got a new set of products. They made huge gains during the pandemic by just ramping the 3 and Y, but it left them with a situation where they were really pushing back on new products for a while. They weren't investing in the new products. And now that's changed. We've seen the Cybertruck come to market. We've seen the upgraded Model 3. We've got an upgraded Model Y coming in a couple quarters. That one is going to be a hot seller for sure. And you've also got some new models that they're starting to talk about. So as these new products have ramped up, as the new Model 3 is ramped up, for example, you've seen some declines in some markets, such as the US market, which honestly has really distorted the market. It makes people think that EV growth is pretty tepid when really, if you factor out this new product introduction, it's pretty strong. Like EV growth ex Tesla was 69%. And if you assume Tesla sales had just been flat, it would be 25% year over year. So the ramp of the new Model 3 combined with the Osborning of the Model Y, combined with the fact that the Cybertruck is out there, but they can't produce that many units, right? We're talking a couple thousand units a month. So a lot of people, a lot of Tesla buyers who maybe would have bought a Y or a 3 or an S and an X, which is available, they're waiting months for a Cybertruck, right? So as these products ramp, I think you will see a lot of delivery growth, but they're really kind of pushing through this transition, and it's kind of a weak point for the company, really. I mean, these products are really viewed like consumer electronics products, but they are not easy to ramp. You know, it's not easy for Tesla to introduce and ramp new products and technologies like with the new Model 3 and Cybertruck. So maybe that's something they need to figure out how to get better at. I don't know. But ultimately, what I'm watching most of all is FSD. If FSD continues to improve, the combination of incredible new products like the new Model 3 Performance, the Cybertruck, new models they've got, combined with the performance of FSD, is clearly going to lead to record sales, I think.
Yeah. All right, we have Machine on the board now, so we can start the show finally. Machine, how are you?
Thank you for acknowledging my greater importance than any other speaker here, as we all know, especially.
I mean, I had to
Alex.
bring up Alex. Exactly.
He's the fake version of me. Kind of has blonde
He
hair
keeps
too.
insulting me and Brazilians. Like average work day is 2 minutes for Brazilians. Like, come on.
I kid you not, when I was in southern Brazil and I would go into a shoe store or clothing store at the mall, there would be no customers, but 8 employees standing around doing nothing because there was a law requiring a certain number of employees to be in the store at any time. You know, this is highly inefficient, obviously.
Yes, but were you served like immediately
Well,
and properly?
I carry around one of those card green red buttons that you flip over when you want to serve you more beer. I just bring that around wherever I went.
All right. Did you listen? As you talk, Machine, I get so many replies from fans asking me to remove you from the space and saying this and that, and they're like, "I'm leaving. I'm doing this." Well, I'm like, I don't care. If you don't like him, you can't leave if you want. Exactly. Just go ahead.
Go ahead.
Anyway, let's go. Let's come back to Tesla.
Machine comes in here. He insults everybody. He insults Brazil, which is a great country.
He insults a new country every day.
He insults the great state of Texas and the city of Austin, a bastion of freedom where you're unburdened by California regulators who want to suck every dollar and joy out of you. And what does he do? He's like those girls, you know, those project manager girls you see, you're like, we're project managers sitting in the jacuzzi. That's Machine getting paid and then coming onto this space and talking shit.
Listen, just because I took a 2-hour trail run yesterday in the middle of the workday does not mean I'm lazy. But on topic, I know you guys want to keep going off topic, but I'm about to eviscerate everyone, including the host, who keeps propagating lies about scaling laws. So see the pinned tweet. You know, I did this analysis a few months ago. If you would have read it, you would have seen a specific instance already where this law, supposed law, did not apply. Not only was the slope different from what you were suggesting, and you and your buddy, whatever his name was, you quoted me, It's not linear.
Gavin Baker. Gavin, you know who
Okay.
Gavin Baker is. Come on.
Look at this plot. Look at this transformer-based computer vision models error rate drop as compute time increases did not stay linear. Okay, so this assumption that it's just going to stay linear in the first place is highly skeptical and dubious. So I totally disagree with this in generalization. Okay, that everyone's going way over the top.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh,
So
I
you're
can't understand.
disagreeing. Hold on. So you're disagreeing with that. It's not going. You're disagreeing with, basically, it's not. You're saying it's not going to stay linear. But what you're not disagreeing with him that we're going to need 10x more compute for having the error rates minus some sort of a diminishing returns, right?
I'm saying whatever. Yeah, this nonsense over that there's some specific increased compute 10x and you get a very specific decrease in error rate is not some fundamental law. That's not a fundamental law at all. It's model specific. Okay. And
yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's what we said, dude. That doesn't
Duh.
disagree with what we say. Yeah,
But you keep talking about it. 10x in compute, having error rate. Where do these numbers come from? This guy just made them up.
We said a lot of times this isn't a real rule.
So
it isn't a
anyways,
real law. It's a concept, right?
It's a concept.
To help people, understand.
And the concept is wrong because it has diminishing returns. So it does not stay that way.
Yeah, we know
as
it
I
has
show.
diminishing returns. We talked about that.
So nothing.
It doesn't necessarily have to be linear, but
So
you
there's
can
no.
see
So the concept
even
has
from the
nothing to
graph
it.
that you've shown here that you do see progress the more data and compute you throw at it.
Yes, with diminishing returns. So we all agree. Increased compute, you get some marginal benefit, but that benefit decreases over time to a point where you may asymptote. You may not necessarily be able to take a given model size and just increase compute forever and get to a zero error rate. Okay, that is a false assumption.
Yeah, no one here. The person claiming that is not here right now. So, would you like to address anything that we said, as opposed to straw man?
Well, I'm going to move on to another topic, and that is another one of your speakers who is saying, he keeps saying that demands for compute have gone down before in the past. So I really want to know, Charlie, when has aggregate compute demand year over year flatlined or gone negative?
Your question is so ludicrous. The whole notion of artificial intelligence is that you can take an incredibly powerful training computer and then train and use data to train a model, and then the model does not need an incredibly powerful computer to do inference on. So by definition, that's what artificial intelligence does. You don't need a whole server room of Nvidia H100s or H200s with you in order to drive a car. You can drive it with a very compact specialized CPU that's designed for driving a vehicle. Do you not?
Okay, machine.
You don't have the background to understand that.
I think we both fully understand that the marginal increase in efficiency in compute has gone up vastly, so that any given model can be computed faster in 2024 than it could any previous year. But that doesn't answer.
What you're saying, compute. What are you talking about? Training, or are you talking about inference?
I'm mostly focused with my claim yesterday was, when were the needs of the world in aggregate?
We're dealing with something new. The artificial intelligence is not the same as interpreted language, which is not the same as assembly code, which is not the same as C++. I've programmed previous times in my life in all four of those languages. So I have a little bit of foundation to be able to talk about this. It sounds like you have no idea what you're talking
That's
about.
okay. Hold on. Okay, we don't need to get heated. We don't need to cut each other off. We don't have to talk over each other. I love you guys the same, and interpret that as you may. But what you really disagree on right now is Charlie believes that hardware 3 will be able to run FSD. I'm assuming he means unsupervised. And Machine believes that this is very unlikely, right? Charlie, let me ask you this. How likely do you think that a 2020 Model 3 owner with a hardware 3 will be able to add his car to the robotaxi network? What % probability would you assign to that?
I would assign 100% probability to it.
Okay, so you're 100%, and then Machine.
2025.
Okay, and then Machine. What % probability would you assign to a Model 3 with a hardware 3 making money on the robotaxi network?
10%.
Yeah, so that's where the real disagreement here is. Omar, what do you think?
75%.
Yeah, so Machine, you're in the minority now. Good job.
But can I say something? That's rude
course.
interrupting from everyone. But my
can't say
point
many
is,
things.
stop interrupting me. My point yesterday was not even about Tesla. It was about this egregious thought process going through people's heads that desire and demand for compute, for training compute, was going to stop happening. And because models are becoming more efficient. But they keep missing the fact that there's induced demand. As these things become cheaper, people will buy more of it. And if you look at this plot I pinned, you can just look at the historical worldwide compute keeps going up. It didn't flatline.
Yeah, I think Machine, I think everyone agrees with everything you're saying.
Okay, well, that's what people responding
like, nobody
to my
disagrees with
claim.
you. Why?
No, but they were disagreeing.
If you want, listen, you can't just like make claims that everybody agrees with and make it sound like you're in the minority and you're just like cool,
I am being oppressed.
It's victimhood syndrome. He's affected. He's like totally
Everybody
woke.
knows compute is increasing. Who is are you arguing with a kindergartner or something, and like you're coming here and telling us about it?
Listen, I am being oppressed by colonial powers coming into this space and taking over my land. I've been displaced and I'm not happy about it.
Are you asking for reparations?
I might be.
All right. Yeah, okay. Ravi.
Yeah, the CEO
Ravi?
of Nvidia. Yeah, the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, made it very clear that the need for compute will keep increasing in future. Every time we humans interact with the internet, there will be a component of generative AI associated to it. So there will be more and more need for compute. So in this case, I agree with Machine that compute demand will not wane anytime soon. And
I mean, you may as well say I agree with everybody. We're all on the same side, guys, on that statement that compute will increase. Demand for compute will increase. I mean, is there anyone in the entire world who thinks otherwise?
I don't know. These computer things might just be a fad.
Anyways, so fine. We all agree on that. So let's get back to this, topic of hardware 3. The reason I give 10% probability is, one, the issues. I think there might be some limitations with hardware 3 from the camera resolution and total compute capacity, and also partly due to the fact simply that I think the main robotaxi revenue generator for Tesla by far will be their dedicated robotaxi vehicle. And I don't think working backwards compatibility for random cars from years ago, especially hardware 3, is going to be in their best interest. It's going to be a minority of their fleet, especially compared to even hardware 4 cars. So I don't think it's a real big important factor.
Okay, I think we all agree with that too, right, Omar?
Well, their philosophy isn't can hardware 3 do it or can hardware 4 do it? Their philosophy is every car needs to be made as good as it can possibly be. Millions of people are driving in hardware 3 cars. You need to make the models that run on that car as safe as physically possible. So they're going to continue to do that, including, I think, well past autonomy.
Ravi.
Yes. Another point came up yesterday. It was a very interesting discussion about the size of the model and if hardware 3 can support full FSD unsupervised one day. One thing to note that Elon mentioned in one of his tweets, in FSD 12.5, the highway and the city road will be one single stack. So instead of running 2 models, probably it will be running 1, and probably the size will be even smaller. So I think they're shrinking the model size as they keep training it to be more and more efficient. That's what we inferred. I would like to hear someone's thoughts about this. Thank you.
Machine. Omar, that machine.
What I heard actually is that they're going to train a separate end-to-end model for the highway, but it'll be end-to-end on both the city and the highway. So, I mean, I think people who have been sort of dissing hardware 3 for years need to start to adjust their estimates, right? Because you have this existence proof where it's now doing most drives without intervention. So identify the issues that are preventing this thing from being driverless, because what I'm seeing on my hardware 3 car is that it can now do almost every drive without intervention. And the issues that I'm seeing, they don't seem to be related to limitations in the hardware. They tend to be things like, okay, it was supposed to go right, but it went left, or that type of thing, where it can see everything just fine. It's sort of a logic issue. So it definitely seems like some of the issues that I'm seeing could be fixed with more training, a better version of the model. So I think we just have a really strong existence proof in hardware 3. It's really difficult to spend all day with hardware 3 doing all your driving for you and say, well, there's some huge limitation here that can't be fixed, especially considering that these cars have been upgradable from day one, right? All the cameras pop off, the computer pops off. What people need to internalize is all you really need for autonomy or for a car to support autonomy is motorized steering and pedals. That's it, right? Like you look at what Comma's doing, they have a device that you can just sort of mount on your windshield and you can plug it into the car and it can move the steering wheel and pedals because most cars have motorized wheels and pedals these days, and it can drive the car with that, right? Just doesn't even need to use the cameras mounted on the car. It just uses a camera that's mounted onto the windshield. So that's really what we're moving towards. We're moving towards a world where you'll actually be able to buy from Best Buy a device, maybe even one made by Tesla, that you can just mount on a car on the windshield and it can actually drive the car. So that's like where it's going to get. And any car, even an old car, yes, they'll be able to upgrade it if it has the capabilities. I mean, Teslas, they even have redundant motors, everything. The computer they have is insanely powerful. It's running the latest FSD. We haven't moved past hardware 3 at all. If it isn't powerful enough, then they can put a new computer in there. They've already replaced the hardware 2 computer with the hardware 3 on most people's cars, not everybody's cars. But it's upgradable. The cameras are upgradable. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. Even if they can't do it, give someone a coupon. Give them a free car. Give every hardware 3 customer a free car, honestly. Because if you solve autonomy, it really just won't matter. So the amount of time we spend sort of debating it compared to the reality that the hardware 3 cars are still running the latest and greatest software and doing drives without any intervention. I mean, Elon says he thinks they can get to around a year per intervention before going on to hardware 4. I think the results just sort of speak for themselves. We can talk about all this theory about scaling laws and diminishing returns, and then you can just actually look at the product and realize that it's doing things that no one ever predicted hardware 3 would be able to do.
The amount of time we spend on it is so much because you talk too long. Now, from us people who speak more eloquently and succinctly, I refer you to my thread, which I've heard a lot of people say it's the best thread they've ever seen on Twitter about scaling laws. It's absolutely the best.
Are these people in your head?
Some of them. And if you look at it and you understand that there's a lot of factors with compute and data and model size, and the simple fact is that each of those things contributes to making a better model, but increasing just one of them ultimately gives you diminishing returns. And so ultimately, in the end, you likely have to increase all of them. And so that's where it comes into the fact that we may have to have more compute than hardware 3. If we hit that diminishing return where we have to increase the number of parameters in model, that seems likely in every other AI model in the world that happens. That's the way they tend to go. And when you have limited compute, you're going to try to withhold and not do that for as long as possible. But I think it's a reasonable conclusion to 100x the miles per intervention, which is what we need to do, at least 100x, that you're going to get some of that. You can't get all of it from increasing the data and the compute time. That some of that may have to come from increasing model size. That's not that absurd.
Okay, fine. But
I mean, if you look at like the performance,
this machine, on one hand, you're kind of pessimistic about hardware 3, and you're talking about these diminishing returns of scaling laws and everything, which we all agree with, obviously. But then on the other hand, you're betting me that 12.5 is going to be able to do 99% of the trips without a intervention or critical disengagement. So can you kind of tie between those two for me?
Yeah, I can. I believe to get 99% of your drives without a critical disengagement does not require a 100x improvement in miles per intervention. I believe a 5 to 10x improvement in miles per intervention would achieve that. And I believe that is probably feasible with current hardware, as I tweeted in that thread, and then also because the obvious statement from Musk that he's seeing that sort of performance improvement. So if you just take what he says, even if he's skewing it a little bit, if we're getting a significant performance bump, then that should show out in terms of percent of trips that are performed without intervention. So I think it's pretty straightforward.
So you're convinced that we will actually see a 5 to 10x improvement, which I think he said it with 11.4. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see exactly 5 to 10x and 11.4, but I do believe by .5 that may be the case. Now, I think
is there any specific reason why you think 12.5 is going to have such a material improvement from 12.4? Or is it kind of like, you're assuming Elon said it, but he's late, but he always delivers kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, he said that 12.4 would have the big improvement over 12.3, and then 12.5 would have another significant improvement. So I'm just assuming that one of those is going to happen basically by 12.5. And the reason why this may conflict in your brains with my hesitation on robotaxi level is because I'm very fixated on actually getting to robotaxi level and what that takes. And I'm not moved by these more medium term, intermediate improvements, which don't necessarily mean that finish line has changed and what it needs to take to get there hasn't changed. So everything in my mind is about robotaxis and getting to this 100,000 miles per intervention as a minimum and what it takes to do that. So, because that's the investment thesis.
You didn't really answer my question, which is okay. I just wanted to see if there was any specific reason why you're so excited about 12.5, which...
It's just because he said so. It's because he said so.
Gotcha. Because the answers, I got you. Except that he said it for 12.4 anyway.
Yeah,
You're
and
not
I'm
making
saying
any sense.
he's always late, like you said. I agree
Right,
with
right.
you.
So why not 13?
Oh, I'm willing to give him some benefit of the doubt that he's not
Okay.
totally lying. He has to be totally lying,
No,
basically.
he doesn't. He
I-
just has to be more optimistic than what you're assuming.
If he's going to say literally,
Can I hear from Charlie? Because Charlie makes at least some sense. Charlie, go ahead.
Yes. So, again, my point is this. I just posted on the internet, and I knew about this a month ago. I posted this on Twitter, so it's now public knowledge. I'm not under any kind of NDAs with Tesla, so it's perfectly legal for me to post this. What I posted today. The robotaxi vehicle is already in the process of being tooled up. It will launch next year. It's a billion to $2 billion investment for Tesla to tool up that vehicle. Model 3, they spent $2.5 billion on. So I'm being very conservative when I say it's $1 billion investment to tool up the Model the robotaxi. The Model 2 is also designed to function as a robotaxi. It's designed to not have a steering wheel. It can either have a steering wheel or no steering wheel. So both of these vehicles are being tooled. Actually, Elon Musk allowed a rumor to, I guess, flourish that the Model 2 had been canceled. It was not canceled.
Okay, Charlie, you're jumping around topics right now. We're not even talking about models.
Well, no, but my point is this.
Okay,
No,
what's your
but
point?
my point is this. You don't, a rational public company does not invest $2 billion to tool up two new vehicles that will be dedicated that can only be sold if FSD works, unless FSD works. And what Elon Musk has talked about is that 12.5 and 12.6 are already to the point where they're incredibly good. The reason why they can't release 12.5, 12.6 to the public is because the AI models are like black boxes. You don't know what's hiding inside them. You don't know what insanity what insanity the AI model might have. So you must test the hell out of the AI model before you release it. But all of this it's done. FSD will both of those vehicles.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. Alex, I see you posted 2 hours ago. Ford is going to license FSD from Tesla. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, how is Ford gonna accomplish this in 2 years? Like, this is simple deduction that they'll have to license from Tesla because Tesla will be there and will have the resources to deploy full self-driving. So yeah, I stand by that. Where's Ford's like supercomputers and cooling towers and millions
Omar,
of
what do you think
vehicles on the
about?
road?
Yeah, Omar, what do you think about Ford's claims? Your father's claim that Ford is going to get to level 3 in 2 years.
Well, probably what he's talking about is a feature like Mercedes, which is useless. So this is the problem with the industry. They're more focused on gimmicks and the appearance of progress than actually solving self-driving in a generalized way that would actually allow you to truly replace car ownership. And I mean, they can't even do driving on city streets now. Now they're going to be level 3. So nobody wants a traffic jam assistant. They want a driving assistant, or they want the car to do all the driving for them. And they're really probably going to pour a lot of money into this feature that isn't being poured into maybe actually building an end-to-end system or licensing it from somebody who can build one.
And I got to say, like, to add to what Omar just said, which is totally true, they also like headlines. So they'll make big announcement. As Omar posted like today, I think, about Mary Barra saying in 2021 that they will catch up to Tesla by 2025, and we're in 2024 and they just cut their projections in half. So the same thing is with Ford. You know, he has to be talking about full self-driving because everybody's talking about full self-driving. So he has to give a signal out there that Ford is not, you know, lagging behind or is not going to. And when we're going to be 18 months down the road, I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, there's a partnership struck with Tesla and, you know,
Machine.
whatever.
Do you remember when Mary Barra said in like 2020 that they're going to have 5 million EVs a year this year? Ridiculous.
I mean, Gary Ford's CEO in 2019 said by 2020 they're going to have robotaxis. You know, making claims is easy. Omar then was.
Yeah, I mean, talk is definitely cheap. I saw a video from Mate Rimac, the CEO of Rimac Bugatti. Rimac, you know, the electric supercar maker, which merged with Bugatti. And he said, okay, we got the new Bugatti, which we've just unveiled, the new Bugatti hybrid that we did in collaboration with Rimac. And now we're going to unveil our robotaxi next week. And apparently Bugatti's doing, you know, a Bugatti robotaxi. That sounds kind of interesting. Is it
Did you
going to be
hear my
like
mom is also doing a robotaxi, unveiling just like on 7th of August, just the day before Tesla unveils theirs.
Well,
It's going to be awesome.
she did give me a ride yesterday.
No, don't go there.
and
Brazil is fine, but moms are off limits.
If moms are off limit, you're not going to have fun in this space with Machine. But
Dude, but that's Machine's bread and butter, his mom.
But you know, I mean, yeah, anyone can kind of say, you know, they're doing a robo taxi, and I saw comments and people said, "Oh, here's the guy who's really gonna do a robo taxi right. He's not a bullshitter like Elon." I'm like, seriously? You think that Rimac Bugatti is going to figure out how to do a robo taxi? Maybe they can unveil a design. I'm sure it'll be a really interesting design, but to make it actually work safely is, you know, among the most challenging software problems of our time. And I don't see how they could even scratch the surface. I think they're going to be contracting out to Volvo or something for the autonomy solution.
All right, quick announcement. This space is sponsored by my patrons. The link to Patreon is at the top of your screens. Patrons get daily summaries of each space, 5 to 10 bullet points. So if you can't make it to the space that day, you can just invest a couple of minutes to read the summary instead. And you can also use it as, you know, time markers. On weekends, Saturdays, I send out a Tesla weekly update, and on Sundays, I send out a macro weekly update as well. So that link is at the top of your screens. Uzi.
With Ford and Mercedes, once FSD becomes robotaxi level, or in other words, driver attention is useless, then it becomes an entertainment vehicle. And that's when it's painstakingly clear the difference between Mercedes and Tesla just by the virtue of the product. And at that point, there will be this FOMO for the Tesla because it'll have like an entertainment platform. And that's when we'll see FSD adoption really go from like 20% to maybe like 50, because it's fun.
Thanks, Uzi. Grant, welcome.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going great. I know you're really excited to talk about Optimus, right?
It's my favorite. I'm looking forward to getting one next year or whatever the timeline is.
We actually had really good discussions in the last couple of days about Optimus, and I do look forward to continuing that. I put out a tweet earlier today asking people about what they want to know about Optimus. Is there anything you want to know about Optimus, Grant?
I actually, yeah, I'm going to adopt a bearish belief here. I mean, I don't really have the same level of optimism that I think this group does, but I segment the market opportunity into industrial use cases and consumer use cases, which I think everyone generally agrees on. I listened back to some of the episode from yesterday, and Omar, I had a tweet where I kind of roasted what you said. I just don't know that I fully understand exactly what the industrial use cases are. People are like, oh, look at this robot. It can pick things up. It can walk around. Like, a lot of automation already exists in typical factories. A lot of the people in factories might not be like moving things around. It's an open question in my mind of whether or not a humanoid robot is actually the optimal construct to efficiently take a box and move it to the other end of the room. Like, just an open question. Like, what are the specific use cases that we're most excited about Optimus being leveraged for in an industrial setting?
Yeah, great question. So I think go walk inside a factory or any industrial commercial facility. Anything you see a person doing, that's a candidate to be automated by this. Whether it's the receptionist, somebody doing a pick and place task in the warehouse, somebody operating a crane, somebody, you know, monitoring for security, whatever the task is, you'd want to be able to automate a large number of those. And it's not necessarily about specialization. I think there's always going to be specialized robots, your KUKA robots of the world, they're probably not going anywhere. And there's going to be continue to be specialized equipment. But you think about the iPhone, big glass screen. Is that necessarily the best form factor for a phone? Maybe not necessarily. Is it necessarily the best form factor for a flashlight? Well, most flashlights aren't shaped like that. Is it the best form factor for a camera? Well, maybe it could use a bigger shutter button or something, right? There are specific objects, a compass, that are actually maybe better at being that object, but the iPhone's this really general purpose tool. And I see Optimus as really this general purpose tool that can do a variety of tasks, that can adapt, and that can complement the specialized tools that are in use in those factories.
That was excellent. Excellent. I'm gonna need to crop that. Machine, I'll give you that task. Crop Omar's segment and say this was excellent. Post it on. Go ahead.
Oh, that was so excellent, Omar. That really explained everything so well. Wow. The one thing I would add is that you could have Optimus perform your deadlifts for you, Grant, since you pretend to exercise. As he tweeted me that he loves to go into a gym that has 12 deadlift squat rack stations. This guy is one of these fake bros who pretends they exercise every day. Yeah, I gotta go hit the gym today. Gotta get my Fitbit to tell me I did enough reps. And he's totally gonna get an Optimus and just have it put this Fitbit on the Optimus's wrist and then go post to social media how many exercises he did. It's lame.
Grant?
I don't like to brag about my weightlifting. That's fine. I'm not.
Do you have a Fitbit?
No, I don't have a Fitbit. I was thinking about my wife got an Aura ring, but I don't want to get distracted here. Like, I want to respond to what Omar said, and I'm not trying to be difficult here, but like, the specific question was, what are like the real specific use cases? And the answer, if I distill it, was like, the stuff that people do. I think you mentioned a secretary, potentially security, and then you started talking about iPhones. Like, my specific concern here is that like that's not really a good answer. Iman, I know you thought it was a good answer, but like so that's my comment. The second part of it is that if you go into a factory today and you see a bunch of people, Optimus might not be the right replacement for those people. It's possible that those people are doing tasks that would be most effectively automated with tooling that already exists in industrial settings. If like you went into a factory and you saw a bunch of people carrying boxes from like one end to the other, and you said, wow, we could use 10 Optimus robots to do this, and you didn't think about a conveyor belt, that's like a mistake. I just don't really see like I would like to see more in the way of very specific examples and use cases and case studies. This company used people to do XYZ. Optimus can do it, and it's better. Like, I never get a clear answer there.
Yoda.
Hey guys. Yeah, I think having been inside Giga Texas, they built the Cybertruck through a reverse pyramid method where at the base floor there are a lot of humans doing tasks, ranging from assembling the powertrains, all the way to the very end where they are getting the seams and the
industrial equipment, there's always, as you know, a tension between labor and capital, right? So you could just invest in a ton of labor, do it all manually. You could invest in capital equipment that maybe makes your production more efficient. But there is still a lot of tasks that humans have to do because that trade off just makes sense. If you could get a robot that had an hourly wage that was less than a human doing the same task, but had a better performance, a lot of business owners would go with that. And you can start with the simple tasks like maybe security. You see how they are putting the 4680 cells into packing containers with robots right now, humanoids. And pretty much anything you could do.
Robert.
Yeah, I think the reason you're not getting an accurate answer is very few people spend a lot of time on the factory floor understanding each individual job that's going on the floor. At the Fremont factory, there's 10,000 workers split about, well, maybe even a little bit more now, split among three separate shifts. And I've watched a few of them working. Some of the guys were underneath the dash, clipping in things, and installing your AC units and stuff like that, or your yoke over your wiring over to your steering wheel or something like that. I could see a robot doing some of that, but a robot certainly could help that worker be more productive and hand them tools and stuff like that. So there's a lot of places you can start seeing a robot being used. You're right. If there's something big, you're going to have an industrial robot do that. But there's obviously 2,500 people working at Fremont right now building cars. They're doing something. How much can we replace them in 2026 or add on to them? How can we speed up the line with Optimus, right? That's another way to look at it. Don't look at even replacing the human beings. Let's make the human being superhuman first.
Okay, 5 minute warning. 5 minute warning. We're gonna go through the hands real quick. Grant, and then Lauren, and then Alexander.
Yeah, I appreciate what you guys are saying. I mean, I'm not a manufacturing expert. I don't know what 10,000 people do in a car, manufacturing plant. I do get frustrated when it feels so nebulous. That's
Okay.
that's really the comment. Yep.
Yeah, I said this yesterday too. It looks like we're running out of time at the 2 hour mark. And I think it's because like if people set their reminders at the beginning, we wouldn't be having this like rush at the end. Lawrence?
Yeah, to me, a lot of the opportunity of the bot is not so much you look at an American factory, but you look at a Chinese factory and you look at videos of that, and a lot of it is just lines of people lined up at desks, you know, assembling electronics. And you don't see that in America because you can't do it competitively right now. Like, it's not a thing that you couldn't automate at all with current technology. The problem is the whole process needs to change every year because the electronics industry moves so fast, you'll never be able to pay off that big automation. So it's better just to make it in China and have a bunch of people that can, you know, train them up on the new model every 3 months and they can turn out a new product. Where Optimus, if it works, can allow that kind of manufacturing to be done, you know, in America or anywhere in the world. And it really could be a huge opportunity in my opinion.
Alexander?
Yeah, hello guys. Well, use cases for Optimus in factories is pretty huge. I mean, the robots I talked about yesterday, they are stationary, they're capable, but they are stationary. So you can't move them around. If you have a robot that can walk around, do different tasks, it's more useful. And if Optimus is cheaper, obviously, today's automation solutions is around $100,000. So if you have a system that can do more things, it's more useful. And yeah, it can actually grow the market of automation solutions as well.
Omar?
Yeah, I agree. I think just to give Grant one example is just pick and place. So inbound and outbound shipping is something almost every business does, right? So customer orders product, take the product off the shelf, put it in the box, get the right products they ordered, mail it out. If you can mail it out faster, if you can receive inbound packages, sort them automatically, that's one common use case I think almost all businesses will have. And really, you know, thinking about it, the comment about the Chinese factory, I think really it could really revolutionize how we set up manufacturing. We may actually choose to have less of these fixed capital investments and actually have more of these sort of generalized robots because of the flexibility that it provides, right? If you could have sort of a more dumb manufacturing line that's more sort of manual labor, but then have that automated by humanoids, it could actually give you a competitive advantage in that in the consumer electronics industry, the investment you have to make in fixed tooling really drives the product cycle, right? Like you look at Apple, they're always finding ways to use the old parts, the old products, keep them running, keeping them produced for multiple years to milk the most out of that production line as they sort of amortize it over time. And that could change with Optimus. It could give them a lot more flexibility. It could give you a competitive advantage to actually iterate and innovate faster if you had kind of this host AI production line.
All right. Great discussion today. Again, please set your reminders to 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, 11 a.m. West Coast time, Pacific. I send out a reminder in the mornings. You can set your reminder that way. And I think it would be better if people show up on time so that we're not rushing at the end. This space is sponsored by my patrons. The Patreon link is at the top of their screens. Great discussions this week, and we'll be back next week. Thank you very much, everybody, and take care.